Hey everybody, this is Evan from PC Gamer here at GDC 2013 in San Francisco, and I'm in the Tripwire booth here with John Gibson, president of Tripwire. How's it going, John?
It's going great. Glad to be here with you, Evan.
Terrific. And to my left, I've got Tony, the external producer on Rising Storm. Hello, Tony.
Hi there, Evan. Pleased to meet you.
All right, so you guys, of course, are showing off Rising Storm, as Tony's shirt indicates. The Pacific follow-up, the standalone expansion for Red Orchestra 2. Yep. So why don't you walk me through the demo here today and sort of give a brief introduction to Rising Storm for people that may not have heard of it before.
Okay then, well, Rising Storm is the next game in the Red Orchestra series of World War II first-person shooter games, and like the previous games in the series, it's a large multiplayer combat with very kind of a real focus on kind of gritty realism. We're looking at servers with 64 players, and in this case they're going to be playing as either US Marines or US Army, fighting against the Imperial Japanese Army or the Japanese Marines, the Special Naval Landing Forces.
Great. And if people are familiar with Red Orchestra 2, John, if they played it, if they saw a video of it, what are the differences they should expect in Rising Storm?
So I think the big difference, especially in gameplay, is the asymmetrical gameplay. In Red Orchestra 2, you had two sides that had fairly equivalent weaponry. They all had belt-fed machine guns and submachine guns and semi-automatic rifles and bolt-action rifles. So even though there were a few differences, it was pretty close. In Rising Storm, the weaponry that the two sides have is very different. So we added a lot of asymmetrical gameplay elements, a lot of which we'll be demoing for you today, that really help the Japanese even the odds against the overwhelming firepower of the American side. Cool.
So let's jump right into that. Let's get a sense of the asymmetries that you're talking about. So John's going to drive the demo here, and Tony's going to talk over it.
Exactly.
Great.
Okay, so the first map we're going to be looking at here is Hanto, which is set in the New Guinea campaign, and in this particular case you're going to see that the Japanese are on the front foot. They're actually attacking some US Army units across the Hanto River. And one of the things we're going to see here is one of the things which we've kind of brought into the game to make people want to play Japanese. As John has mentioned, there is this asymmetry, and unless you're a huge bolt-action rifle fan, you may find that asymmetry a little bit daunting without some of the things that we brought in here. So the first thing we're going to do now is, you've seen John spawn. He's going to be running across the river. This is well, I'd say it's a fairly lush kind of environment here. You can see some of the features of the Unreal 3 engine. You can see the dynamic water here, the ripples, etc., etc. And you get exponential height fog, a lot of the kind of eye candy which you would come to expect of this engine. And there are even some god rays as well. So what's happening now is the Japanese are coming across the river, and they're running into the American line of defense. You can see it there, they're quite well dug in. And this is going to be quite a headache for the Japanese. John's firing the Type 89 grenade discharger. This is what we call the knee mortar. And as you can see, he's firing it, originally he's firing it there directly, but he's firing it now more as you'd expect, indirectly. Now the good thing about firing it indirectly is that John doesn't actually have to be there in the line of fire. He could easily bug out, hide behind a rock, and have his team buddies spot for him and let him know where his shells are landing. So it's a pretty good way of making sure the Americans don't hang around in one spot too long, or they're going to get mortared.
So I'm curious with the knee mortar, there's obviously, in one of the firing modes, there's a arc that visualizes. And obviously with the emphasis on realism and authenticity that Red Orchestra places within the setting, do you guys have a conversation about whether that should be left in, left out, if there should be any HUD element to the knee mortar? Oh,
there was certainly a conversation. One of the things I would say is if you try firing that thing, because you don't have any kind of sight on the apparatus at all, you really don't get a very good feel. You don't even get the physical feel that you would have holding it in real life as to the angle exactly. So that actually does make it really quite difficult to use. There is still a conversation about whether it should be removed for a kind of hardcore mode to be had, but certainly it's pretty difficult to play with. One of the things you'll find is that is not a laser sight. Yeah, there is a certain amount of inaccuracy there, so you are not going to land your shell exactly where you want to land it. I'd just like to quickly point out one of the things that John's doing here at the moment, which is another one of the features to make it cool to play Japanese. You'll see percussion caps there on top of those grenades. So what he's done is he's planted that in the ground as a kind of impromptu landmine. Anyone treads on that, boom. We don't have any Americans around, so John has just demonstrated what happens when things explode in your face, quite effectively there. So yeah, regarding the knee mortar there, it is quite a complicated thing. We did try it without any kind of visual indication, and frankly, you could sit there and spam all day without getting a hit. One of the things we found is you do need some kind of indication. Perhaps if we get really experienced players who've been playing this for about 6 months and are getting good enough at it, then we can consider that. I certainly wouldn't rule it out. But for the moment, what we've found is that you simply cannot hit without it.
Right. So here we see John Bansai charging.
Yeah, we certainly are. Pretty awesome. It's relying on the suppression mechanic of RO2. It kind of works in two ways. On one side of the coin, you have the Japanese getting less suppressed, simply because they're pumped full of adrenaline. They don't care about the bullets flying around their head. They don't even care about a bullet nicking them in the leg or something like that. Whereas on the other side of the coin, the Americans, they're kind of semi-panicked there. I've been on the receiving side of a Bansai charge of about 15 guys, and it's pretty scary. You'll notice John has been shot here. Okay, he's finally gone down, but it took several bullets to take him out. He's so full of adrenaline there that, you know, a flesh wound is not going to stop him.
So this mechanic is obviously exclusive to the Japanese side, and it is something. It is sort of a way that you guys are representing the differences that did exist in history. But I'm curious specifically, you know, the Japanese mostly carrying bolt-action rifles, although they do have, of course, machine guns. They do have submachine guns, but the Americans carrying the BAR, the M1 carbine, the M1 Garand, semi-automatic weapons that have a lot of capacity to just put bullets down range. Yep. How much do you sort of have to use the level design as a real tool to sort of balance the game in that way, that is sort of inherently imbalanced?
Well, certainly the level design does have to feed into that. There's also, I mean, you'll find that there are on most maps, there are certainly some very nice kind of bolt action rifle alleys, if you like. But on the other hand, we do need to give the players that don't have bolt action rifles space to get into the combat. You know, obviously, if we just have a huge, great open field, it's going to be a paradise for bolt action players. But we do need to allow the players with for example, the submachine guns to get up close. So it's kind of a fine balance there. You'll also find that when you get up close and personal, the Americans are able to throw a bunch of lead downrange. Even if they don't hit the target, they're going to be suppressing them, which is one of the reasons why the Japanese are inherently slightly less suppressible than the Americans. Okay, if you like, it's kind of feeding into this Bushido code. They're slightly less afraid of death than the American players would be. I'd just like to make a few comments here about the environment, what we're seeing on the map Guadalcanal. As you can see, it's a nighttime map. We've got a lot of different dynamic lights going on, including, as you just saw above there, flares which are marking the objective. The flares can be called in by the commander to let his team know this is where we're going right now. Because one of the things we found through getting feedback from players who are new to the series is that they don't really know what they're supposed to be doing. We do have, of course, the tactical HUD, the on-demand tactical information you get through pressing the T key, and certainly we are going to be encouraging newer players with a series of hints and tutorials that that's what they need to be doing. You know, get that on-demand tactical information up there, but also, of course, any extra help they can get, for example, these flares coming down, showing people where to go. Sorry for laughing there. Ah, did you notice that icon there? Looks like somebody just trod on his mine. So that's... yeah. Oh, is that what happened? Sorry. I didn't get far enough away. Oh, well. There you go. So where was I? Yeah, we found that actually one of the things I think that there's a real aim of Rising Storm here is not to get the new players by kind of degrading the Red Orchestra 2 experience. The idea is to get the new players in and to show them, here's how you play Red Orchestra 2 the way it should be played. You know, here's how you should be using your tactical HUD. Here's how you should be taking cover rather than trying to reload in the middle of an open field. And basically just trying to give training wheels to the player, trying to get them involved in the RO2 experience and to make them enjoy the things which we all love about the game, you know, to draw them in rather than to try and take the game to them.
Great. So being set in the Pacific, one of the inherent things of the setting, of course, is vegetation. And compared to the original Red Orchestra 2 set in Stalingrad, you have a much less barren environment. Can you speak to the role of vegetation in soft cover in Rising Storm?
Yeah, well, in fact, obviously people expect to see the kind of environment we see here, a jungle environment, desert island kind of environment perhaps. And certainly there are enough of those. It's a huge effort regarding the optimization. I remember some early passes of the... oh, there we go. Nice little butt smack there. Some of the early passes at that first map we saw, Hanto, were incredibly heavy in terms of draw calls, in terms of load on people's GPUs, and we've had to do as much as we can to optimize that. And I think in that respect we're really helped by some of the newer picks of talent that Tripwire have been making. For example, they've just recently got Dmitry Steiner, who has a lot of experience working with Crytek and so on. He's been recently recruited as the technical director at Tripwire, and he's feeding a lot of really useful information for us about how can we keep it looking lush, how can we keep these kind of really involving environments without, you know, basically throwing everybody with anything but an Uber computer under a train. So I think another thing as well that we're doing here is we are aiming for a range of environments. Which segues quite nicely into the next map here, which is Saipan. This is actually the closest we've got to a true urban battle. This is the town of Charankanoa, where the US Marine Corps landed in June 1944. This is actually a Japanese colony. There were Japanese companies and civilians on this island. And in fact, the final objective here is the sugar mill, which was kind of one of the iconic locations in this battle. So the Americans are actually now trying to push across the island here and take the sugar mill.
So if you're ready, Evan, we'll give you the reins here and you can play some.
Oh, that's okay. I'll let you keep going. Thanks, though. I'll let you drive. I got to do the talking. All right, so this is Saipan, is the name of this map?
This is Saipan, yeah. This is actually, this works on a system of paired objectives, rather than just having the straight cap A, then B, then C, then D. This one's actually dual objectives, 4 sets of double objectives, meaning that the attackers can make a choice here. Are we going to concentrate on A, or are we going to concentrate on B? And in fact, one of the slight refinements that we've made here is the auto-select button for the spawning. Rather than relying on the player to make a choice, and if they don't make a choice, automatically dumping them on spawn 1, which means you tend to get a big pile of players on one side of the map and nobody on the other. The default now is auto-select, which is going to either spawn you next to a squad leader, which is typical kind of RO2 behavior, or it's going to randomly put you down so that it tends to spread the battle out more evenly across the battlefield. So as we can see now, John's carrying the Browning automatic rifle. One of the points I'd like to make about this is it's an upgradable weapon. As you get more experience using the bar, you will actually get the bipod there. In some of the more realistic settings, of course, if you're playing as a Marine, you probably wouldn't want the bipod because Marines generally didn't use it, but certainly it is an option. And if we're really lucky, I think John's going to go now as a player with a Garand, maybe, and we can talk about the ping.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Okay. Yeah, let me die one more time.
Yeah, no problem. Whenever convenient. So yeah, just to introduce that concept, something we talked about in our article very briefly. I didn't actually get to see it when I was visiting Tripwire last month. Was this, if anybody's watched Band of Brothers or any kind of World War II footage, they might be familiar with the distinctive ping noise that is produced when M1 Garand clip is exhausted, and it's ejected.
In fact, there are some pretty cool compilations of M1 ping clips from various films all put together into a huge, great compilation for the people who are really keen on that sound. It is a very distinctive sound. And unfortunately, it's a sound, unfortunately for the Americans, it's a sound which the Japanese came to recognize. Basically, they hear that ping sound and they think, right, that guy's out of ammo. I'm going to bum rush him right now before he has a chance to reload. What happened, though, is that the Americans actually got wise to that concept. And if you were an experienced player, or rather, if you were an experienced veteran, a Marine, I certainly shouldn't call them players. If you were an experienced veteran, you would generally keep a couple of the empty clips in your pocket, and what you could do is then take out that clip, ding it off your helmet, so that the guys would think, aha, he's out of ammunition, come running at you, and of course you've got a full clip in the gun, ready to take them out. So basically, it's a kind of double bluff situation there, and this actually did happen. And what we've done is we've modeled that into the game. If you get to be an experienced rifle player, then you can make that sound.
So it's something you unlock over time, is that right?
Exactly, yeah. If you get experience using the Garand, that's one of the options available to you. You would just hit the 6 key and ping. You can spoof the enemies into charging you when you've actually still got a load of ammunition.
What do you guys think about in terms of the cooldown for that effect right now? Because conceivably you don't want people to be able to do it continually, and that might get annoying, or maybe not.
You mean ping spamming? Yeah, that's certainly a possibility. I haven't yet heard it. We are still, I mean, as you know, we're actually still in the alpha phase. We're going to be very soon going into beta, and we're getting obviously increasingly large numbers of players actually starting to level up through the weapons. So if we do see that becoming a problem, then certainly we can put a cooldown on that. I'm not entirely sure whether we have seen it yet, but it is a possibility. If it happens in beta, then yeah, we'll do just that.
I think enough people have commented on that one that we're definitely going to have to put a cooldown, or we may even limit it to the number of magazines or clips that you've already shot. So if you've shot one clip, you've got an empty one that you can ping with. And so we're playing around with a couple of ideas to keep it under control.
Sure. I mean, it's by no means a core mechanic, but I'm curious if it's something that you think over time players might stop reacting to. I mean, 6 months, 12 months down the line of Rising Storm.
Well, I think that the Japanese are probably going to get wise to it. So it's probably going to be, I would say, over time, it's going to be the kind of thing which you might use to trick a relatively inexperienced player. Obviously, somebody who's brand new won't even know what the ping means. But you certainly could try and use that to trick some inexperienced players. I'd just like to start commenting now on what we're seeing here. Which
let's talk about the Flamethrower.
Yeah, it seems to be John barbecuing himself. Well, first of all, we're on the map Iwo Jima. If you look over there, you can see the iconic Mount Suribachi. Obviously, people are very familiar with the flag going up on the top of there. And if you look out, well, okay, we've just seen
that's grisly.
Barbecued Japanese guy. It is pretty grisly. And there's a barbecued flamethrower operator who forgot about the volumetric flame effect spider.
Tip: don't walk over your own fire.
Understood.
Yep. One of the things you do discover quite quickly is that fire hurts. It's certainly one of the motifs of the game here. Okay, so another thing that we've noticed through testing with the Flamethrower, apart from, as you pointed out in your article, it's incredibly fun to play. Far more fun to roast somebody alive than it really should be. One thing we've noticed is that the players the Japanese, they see a Flamethrower and they all home in on him. You know, you immediately become public enemy number one. Every single sniper on the map is going to start gunning after you. So there's also the fact that obviously it's a fairly heavy piece of kit to carry around. You're slightly slowed down by that. You know, you're not going to be able to duck around from cover as much as you might be able to with just say an M1 carbine or one of the lighter weapons. So a good tip really for a Flamethrower operator is find out where your buddies are, find out where the rest of your team are. If there are guys in front of you who are still alive, then there's a good chance it's safe to follow them. If you try charging in like sort of, you know, like Rambo at a pillbox, you're going to get taken out pretty quickly in very short order, particularly when you start spraying that fire around, because every Japanese is going to be going for you.
So I'm curious, I mean, this is an incredibly devastating weapon in certain situations. It basically instantly kills enemies the way it's balanced right now. Were you guys ever doubting, or yeah, there you go, John, wow. Were you guys ever worried that, you know, bringing such a devastating, arguably arcade-style weapon into a game like Red Orchestra might be a bad decision?
I don't think you could. I don't know whether you could call it really an arcade-style weapon. I mean, basically, it's about as devastating as a flamethrower should be, which means if you're up close and personal with a flamethrower, then you really are going to be getting on people's nerves quite a lot. It's particularly useful on this map, I would say, because you have got a lot of really, you know, you've got a lot of communications trenches, you've got a lot of cover, you've got a lot of bunkers where the volumetric flames can come into their own. Certainly on some of the more open maps, it's less effective. It's still effective if you happen to get close, but your opportunities to get into a position where you can use it are limited. And really, I can't stress enough, the reaction of the Japanese when they see that flame, because it is visible from pretty much across the entire map, means that you've got to be pretty careful. You're going to have to stay in cover a lot of the time. You're going to have to be running from cover to cover, or else you're in big trouble. It's perhaps not quite so visible with the when in a bot match such as this.
Think about the flamethrower. If you watch as I shoot into this wall here, it actually, well, let me get away from my friendly guy here. It actually bounces off of walls, and that means, you know, if you're shooting into a bunker, you can fill it with fire without actually exposing yourself, which really makes it really well suited for clearing bunkers on a map like this.
Is that modeled after actual flamethrower behavior? I haven't fired one.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, let's talk more generally about Iwo Jima here. If we can stay on the map, that's cool, John. It's, you know, the Japanese start at the top of the hill, of course. It's kind of a siege style map. Is that a fair comparison?
Well, I think what the main point about the map here is it's basically depicting the action of the first day of the invasion, where the 28th Marines came up on Green Beach, and they were tasked with cutting across the neck of the island, basically isolating Mount Suribachi from the rest of the island. And so what we're showing here is the Marines cutting across with Suribachi on their left, and the eventual goal here is to reach the top of the top of the island, if you like, the highest point of the neck. There were extensive bunkers here. The Japanese had a long time to prepare. I always love that bit, sorry. There were extensive earthworks here. The Japanese had a long time to prepare. They knew that this was coming. And as you can see, the bunkers were pretty well chewed up by the artillery bombardment. In fact, if you look offshore there, you can see the artillery right now still continuing to throw heavy artillery onto the island. Particularly, they were spamming Mount Suribachi at this point. So it's fairly accurate in that respect. You've got a lot of the interconnected bunkers here. We've added a few kind of objectives. I don't know if we can see them here. A few objectives, destructible objectives, which are kind of a feature which perhaps didn't get as much, if you like, airtime in Red Orchestra 2 as we'd have liked. So we've made a conscious decision to add those here, basically giving the engineers something to do. You know, let's get the guys into the cap zone, and if they can actually blow it up, then it's not going to be recappable. So you're giving the players something which gives their actions in game an actual gameplay ramification. You know, stick a satchel on that objective, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. It's not going to get recapped. So we're trying to combine that. Obviously, we have to make it fun to play. Having a bunch of Marines walking up the beach and getting hacked down by the Type 92 machine guns might be very filmic, and it certainly worked really well in, for example, Letters from Iwo Jima, and the other one, Flags of Our Fathers. But as a gameplay experience, it's going to be about as much fun as perhaps doing the Bataan Death March or something like that. Yeah, it's really not going to work as a gameplay experience. So we've given the Americans a chance to actually get up there with the cover, the concealment provided by the smoke shells, and a few other of the extra environmental effects there, so that the Americans do have a chance to get up there without it being an absolute slaughter as they come off the beach, which, you know, in fairness, was what really happened. Just not particularly very interesting from a gameplay perspective. So yeah, I mean, I think in terms though of the environment itself, you know, we've captured really nicely, I think, the kind of grey vibe of the island. One of the guys who was actually helping us with the research, he spent a lot of time on the island, so he was providing us with a lot of hints and tips about the nature of the environment there, about the battlements, about the kind of entrenchments, etc., that the Japanese had. So I'd say in that respect we're being very true to the original battle.
Great. All right, Tony and John, thanks very much for the demonstration of Rising Storm. If people want to learn more about the game, where should they go?
RisingStorm.com.
Great. It's easy to remember. And when should we expect the game?
It's coming out this year. It'll be sooner than you think, but not as soon as you want.
That's very poetic. All right, thanks for your time, guys.